Hey, we're glad that you're joining us online this evening. Welcome to Thursday Church, where we're doing church differently while staying true to the message of Jesus Christ. If ever there was a time, now is the time that we need to know the message, stay true to the message, embrace the message, because 2020 is a messed up year. It is just a messed up year. We are constantly needing to remind ourselves, folks. We gotta remind ourselves that God's vision is 2020, and none of this weird year has caught him by surprise. His vision is perfect. He has a plan for us. He has authority over us. He has truth for us, direction for us. And even when our world is turned upside down, his expectations for us, it has not changed. Nothing has changed. Find peace in that, folks. God's plan and his purpose for us, it has not changed. And so we stand on the truth of Jesus. We stay true to the message no matter what trial we face, period. Because God's expectation of his people, it has not changed. So that tagline, that mission statement that we memorized for the last 12 years, and we're going to stay true to the message of Jesus Christ now more than ever. It is very, very fitting. As followers of Jesus Christ in a world filled with doom and gloom and confusion and uncertainty, in a year that wants to derail us, in a year that wants to have us detracted from the message of Jesus Christ, when the enemy is trying to steal our hope, we've got to stay true. We've got to stay true to his word. See, if we allow ourselves to lose hope, I want you to hear me. If we allow ourselves to lose hope, we find ourselves in this spiral, this downward spiral to a pit that is filled with discouragement and disappointment and heartache. The loss of hope is a surefire spiritual signal of one thing. It is the sign of one thing that has happened. And what that is that we are no longer relying on God. When we lose our hope, we are not relying on God. We have turned the page, so to speak, and instead of relying on God's strength, God's authority, God's truth, what we find ourselves doing is trying to stand on our own accomplishments, on our own power, on our own wisdom, on our own knowledge. And what happens when we do that is we throw hope right out the window. That's a very sad predicament to be in, to be without hope. Hope is what gives us encouragement. Hope is what gives us joy. Hope is what fills us up when we're running on empty. Hope gives us strength. Hope inspires us to carry on. Hope allows us to dream big, audacious, God-sized dreams, and hope allows us to seek goals for the future. But when hope is gone, this world is a dark, lonely, dreary place filled with doom and gloom. Deuteronomy 31:8 says, "The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged." When I think about this year, 10 years, 20 years from now, because we're all going to remember 2020. And when I think about this year, the one thing that will probably overshadow all of the experiences would be that there was a moment in time when people became so negative. When people seemed to lose hope. Almost everywhere I go, I can hear at least one person voicing something negative about anything. You name it. There's this negativity that is stirring, and it's from a loss of hope. And instead of being filled with excitement and anticipation about what is to come, everyone is dreading what Thanksgiving Day is going to look like instead of being excited because, now it looks like that, families aren't going to be able to get together. Things aren't going to look like they have in the past. There's just a lack of positivity connected to dreams and looking forward to the future. My sister and I were talking about this morning, and I said, but Jackie, so we're not going to be able to do Thanksgiving like we've always done Thanksgiving. I'm going to start to cry. But you know what's going to happen? We're going to cherish the times when we do get together. And instead of making excuses, we are going to desire to be together. And we'll make it happen. We can't lose hope. We can't be people who are afraid. We can't be people who are discouraged. We cannot be people who are standing on fear. But yet the unknown, boy, doesn't it seem heavy? It seems so heavy. In the world of psychology, they've created a new word. And I'm going to tell you, it really sounds like a Dr. Seuss word to me. This new word is awfulizing. Awfulizing. Say it with me. Awfulizing. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss word. Awfulizing refers to an irrational, dramatic thought pattern characterized by the tendency to overestimate the potential seriousness or negative consequences of an event, a situation, or a perceived threat. But the only way this awfulizing can happen is if there actually is a real threat. So there's a real threat, but then instead of departmentalizing that threat, placing boundaries around that threat, understanding the length and the depth and the breadth of that threat, what happens with awfulizing is that this person now has this lens of negativity that now goes across everything. And you guessed it, everything is awful. Awfulizing. Awfulizing to me, if I were a psychiatrist, I would simply say, it's a loss of hope. That's what it is. Last week, I was in the store. There's this gorgeous selection of turkeys. And so I walk up to the turkeys, and I'm looking at the turkeys, and all of a sudden, I began to awfulize myself. I started to talk to a total stranger with my awfulizing. I thought, what am I doing? I can't do this. I can't do this. But I was this close to telling a total stranger. I had to talk myself down. I was this close to telling a total stranger, well, I don't even know why I'm looking at these turkeys. My family's not even going to get together for Thanksgiving. I just don't even know why. Why do they even have them for sale? This is just awful. Why are we even, you don't need a turkey either, lady. No one needs a turkey. That close. And I wish that I could tell you that I chose not to awfulize because of my deep faith. I wish that I could tell you that in that moment I heard my mother's voice saying to me, and I was just being obedient to her. I could hear her saying, don't be a negative Nellie. Or I could hear my mother saying, think positively, Deborah Sue. I wish that I could say that I was filled with hope, and I cried out to the Lord, and I said, Lord, give me some hope. And he said, okay, you little awfulizer, you. And I wish I could have stood on the teaching that I had a solid teaching as a child. I wish I could have claimed Ephesians 6:1 that said, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for it's the right thing to do. Or Colossians 3:20 that says, obey your parents in everything, for it pleases the Lord. I really wish those scriptures would have ran through my head as I heard my sweet mother's voice telling me to have a positive attitude. But none of that happened. Do you know why I stopped awfulizing? because of a insurance commercial. Yeah, watch it.
All right, everyone, we made it.
My job is to help new homeowners who have turned into their parents.
I'm having a big lunch and then just a snack for dinner.
So we're using a speakerphone in this store. Is that a good idea?
One of the ways I do that is to get them out of the home.
You're looking for a grout brush.
Guard, did he ask for your help?
No.
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 We all see it. We all see it.
He has blue hair.
Okay.
Blue.
Progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents, but we can protect your home and auto when you bundle with us.
Keep it coming. You don't know him.
Okay, you laugh because you've all done the exact same thing. You know that you have. And the truth of the matter is, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea to be a little more like our parents or your grandparents, depending on how old you are. See, for most of our grandparents, some of your parents, depending on how old you are, our parents or grandparents are identified as being part of a group of people that have been labeled, given the label of the greatest generation. And they are described this way because of their commitment to America. They're described this way because of their commitment to one another. They're described this way because they faced abject poverty. They grew up in the Great Depression. They understood what it meant to make a sacrifice for someone else. And they made sacrifices willingly. Almost everyone knew someone who was serving in World War II. Many people lost loved ones. And the folks who were left at home, often they were asked to ration their gas, their sugar, even their nylon hose, as I read about this. And that doesn't sound like much, except they didn't have spray tan, and they didn't wear pants. So if you didn't have nylons, ooh, not a good thing. They even rationed the nylon hose, and a lot of people went to work in factories so that things could be created that would help the soldiers. And they did so willingly. They experienced extreme hardship, not a little hardship, extreme hardship. And they lived through it, and they were better because of it. But they didn't allow the hardships to own them. They didn't lose hope. They had faith in this country and in each other. They didn't allow those experiences to divide them. They stood on those experiences, difficult as they were, and they allowed those experiences to strengthen them, to hold them together with a common purpose. They were not divided, they were unified, and that's why they are defined as the greatest generation. Sad to say, though, division, it has become our new normal. It has become a go-to. Division just seems to be everywhere. When I think about the difference between that generation and what they experienced and what we are experiencing today, I would have to say that the difference comes down to this expectation of division. We expect it. We encourage it. We speak it. On Meet the Press, Chuck Todd made a statement that just shook me to the core. I wanted to yell at the television and go, no, that is not true, that is not true. And yet, in my heart, I knew that it was. He said, Americans are divided on everything except division. Is that not an ugly way to define our country? That doesn't sound like anything great to me, that we are divided on everything except division. In other words, division has become our new normal. I don't want the world to watch our nation and say that we are a nation divided. I don't want the world to watch, but nor do I want God. I don't want God Almighty to look down upon this nation and see division, a spirit that divides even among his people. See, division doesn't just happen. We have to choose it. But as easily as we can choose division, we can lay down something and choose unity. We can set something aside and seek peace. See, we got to realize that unity and peace, this isn't someone else's responsibility. It's the responsibility of God's people. We have been chosen for such a time as this. God has called us to this time. And the world should be seeing within the church peace and unity, even when we don't agree with one another. And the only way that happens is if we lay something down. Abraham Lincoln brought this country through a time of extreme division. In 1858, he gave one of the very strongest speeches that he ever gave, and it's since been titled. It wasn't titled at that time, but since, as people look back, it has been titled "The House Divided." And he told the nation that this disunity that is destroying us, this disunity over the issue of slavery, that it will bring destruction to our country if it is not addressed. If someone doesn't lay something down. His speech became one of the best known speeches of his whole career. And not because it was based on his opinion of slavery, but because it was based on a biblical truth found in Mark chapter 3, verse 24. And it says, "A kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. I've never been able to say this word. Similarly, it's going to be real similar, that a family splintered by feuding, they will fall apart. A nation divided by civil war, or a family that feuds, it'll fall apart. In other words, a house divided cannot stand." Open a Bible, we're going to turn to 2 Samuel, chapter 18. We're going to begin with verse 6. That's page 270. You're always going to get more out of God's word if you are looking at it for yourself. Very good. If ever there was a story about a house divided, this is it. This is it. King David's son, Absalom, he has decided to revolt against his father. And this is taking place within the nation of Israel. David was their king. He was their king, but young Absalom has decided that he is going to be gathering up his own kingdom within Israel. David's mighty men, they were warriors. They were strong, they were mighty, and they were almost never defeated. Who would go up against King David except his arrogant son who thought, "I can defeat my dad"? And so Absalom successfully arranged an army of his own. Doesn't make sense because David was such a mighty king, but yet even within that kingdom, Absalom was able to gather up his own army. And the nation was confused. They didn't know who to follow. Do they follow Absalom? Do they follow David? They were confused because they were divided right down the middle. And what's worse is this division was taking place because of this son who was disrespecting his father. There wasn't unity. There was only division. Now verse 6. And so the battle began in the forest of Ephraim, and the Israelite troops were beaten back by David's men. In other words, here we go. David's mighty men, they're going to take down Absalom. It's breaking David's heart. There was a great slaughter that day, and 20,000 men laid down their lives. The battle raged all across the countryside, and more men died because of the forest than were killed by the sword. And what this means is that Absalom, he wasn't a good warrior. He had led his men on terrain that was very dangerous, cliffs and waterfalls and all kinds of dangers. And so the land itself is battling against Absalom. The Lord's blessing is not upon him. And as he is leading, he's not leading well. And because he's not leading well, his men were dying. And not just by the sword, but literally because of the way he was leading. Verse 9, during the battle, Absalom happened to come upon David's men. He tried to escape on his mule, but as he rode beneath the thick branches of a great tree, his hair got caught in the tree. His mule kept going and left him dangling there in the air. One of David's men saw what had happened and told Joab, "I saw Absalom dangling from a great tree." You got to know who Joab is. Joab is the commander of David's army. But Joab is also David's beloved nephew. That makes Absalom his first cousin. Okay? Verse 11. "What?" Joab demanded. "You saw him there and you did not kill him? I would have rewarded you with 10 pieces of silver and a hero's belt." "I will not kill the king's son for even 1,000 pieces of silver," the man replied to Joab. "We all have heard the king say to you and Ubisha and Ittai, 'For my sake, please spare young Absalom.' And if I had betrayed the king by killing his son, the king would certainly find out who did it. And you yourself, you would be the first to abandon me." "Enough of this nonsense," Joab said. He took 3 daggers and he plunged them into Absalom's heart as he dangled there, still alive, in the tree. Gruesome story. David wins the battle. David wins the battle, but he's heartbroken. Because there was division. And division that isn't settled, division that isn't worked out, division that isn't cleared up, it will always lead to heartache, even in the face of success. David's mighty men, they won. They won the nation. But there wasn't any success. Winning didn't feel like a victory. There wasn't any reconciliation. This father and son, there wasn't any unity. And these soldiers that had put their lives in danger to fight for their country, they had success. But even though they had destroyed the single greatest threat to David's reign, it was as if they just quietly came home, shameful almost. They had won a mighty victory. They had saved King David's leadership. They had saved the nation. But they didn't rejoice, and they didn't come home as victors, because reconciliation wasn't sought. Because these 2 leaders who fought against each other, and even though David won, the nation was still broken. The battle was over. The victory was at their feet. And yet, they felt broken. The nation still felt broken. They had declared a leader, and yet, because there wasn't reconciliation, there was brokenness. I don't know about you, but I think that story sounds real familiar to what we're living right now. We are living in a divided country. Regarding politics, it's Republicans against Democrats. The Democrats think they're right, the Republicans think they're right, and there's constant disagreement. In the face of this pandemic, this battle is raging over a 5-inch piece of fabric. Some people are saying the science proves putting this mask on saves lives, and other people are saying, but I have the right. Someone's trying to take away my right. And the battle rages. And there's constant disagreement because no one's laying down. No one's reconciling. Racial disputes, white versus black. Groups of people are marching and protesting, saying, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, while other groups are saying, all lives matter, all lives matter. And there's this constant turmoil, constant disagreement. And at every turn, it seems that we have become a nation very comfortable with division. We argue instead of choosing to reconcile. But through this all, for such a time as this, God is saying, church, I'm giving you an opportunity. Look at this moment in time. I'm handing you an opportunity. You have an opportunity to lead the way, to show the world around you what it looks like to surrender to peace, what it looks like to seek peace, what it looks like to be focused not on being right and winning, but to be focused on being a group of people who seek to love and reconcile no matter what we believe, no matter where we stand on an issue. As the church, we ought to be seeking reconciliation. But the only way that happens is if we get real honest with ourselves and say, what is it that I need to let go of? What am I going to have to lay down? What right am I going to have to let go of? What notion am I going to have to surrender so that I can seek reconciliation with someone who thinks differently than I do? Are you willing, church, to seek reconciliation with someone who thinks differently than you? Will you cross the aisle? Will you be a peacemaker? Or will we as a nation just end up like David and Absalom, fighting to the death, and no one wins? In John 17, as Jesus prayed over his disciples, he said, I have given them the glory that you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. He's talking to God the Father, this connection that you and I have, God. May they have the same thing. I am in them, and you are in me. And may they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me and that you love them as much as you love me. He prayed that we would be people who seek unity. Often I finish the message saying, this week I want you to focus on this. I'm not asking you to just think upon or focus on something. I'm asking you to do something. I want you to take your seat reminder home. I want you to look at it. And this is what it says. I will. Not I'm going to think about it. Not maybe someday. Not if it's easy, because this will not be easy. It will cause you to lay something down. I will seek reconciliation with someone who thinks differently than I. Church, can we be agents of peace? Can we be people who seek reconciliation? And can we reflect the love of Jesus to the world around us?